Everyone, welcome to JS Gigs and my name is Deepak. Here in this tutorial, I'm going to be talking about the remaining points from the list. So point number 4, point number 6, and not so important, which is a web container and default documentation location change of Angular dev, right? So these are the 4 points I'm going to be talking about. This is going to be the last tutorial of this Angular 18 series, and post that we are going to be starting some new series, and for that you will have to stay tuned and keep subscribing to my channel, and you would be notified when I post a new series, or when I start the new series rather. Right, so let's just talk about the first point, which is the event replay. Right, so what do you mean by event replay? So event replay essentially means, and it is basically used in case of a SSR. So SSR meaning server side rendering. So whenever you have a server side rendering, and let's say if your page was about to load, so in such cases you tend to display something on the screen, and then user tend to click on those. So during the SSR, whenever there is this, while doing the SSR, and when a user interacts on the page before it loads, it keeps track of all the events that user has played so far, and then when page loads complete, it plays those events. So how does it happen? It basically happens using this. So in event replay, you will have to give this in your Bootstrap application. So let's just put this. So let me copy this, and I'll take you to my code editor. And there in the code editor, I'm going to be opening the app config.ts. Here in the app config.ts, I'm going to be putting this thing here. So Bootstrap application, there is something which we have already done. So I'm going to be removing this here. Also this thing from here, and providing hydration client. That's something I'm going to be importing. And with the event replay, there's something I'm going to be importing from, again, platform browser. So once these two are imported, that's something you can use. So event replay is essentially a topic that comes when you are doing the SSR, right? So now in our application, we are not really doing the server side rendering. We are using this application in the dev mode, or we do the dev bundle, and that's what we essentially deploy. So this is something which we cannot test at this moment. Plus, but if you wish to know more about this, and if you really want me to create a tutorial around server side rendering, please do write down in the comment section below. I'll be more than happy to create one tutorial for you, right? But for now, I think this is how you set up, for the event replay thing. And as I said earlier, when while the page loads, and in case if a user is interacting with the page before it loads, that's when it will replay the event once the page is loaded, or through the SSR. So this is essentially the SSR topic, and that SSR is, we do not have an application that we have converted to SSR, or we are loading through SSR. So I'm going to be skipping this part. But how do you set up? It's fairly simple. You just need to go to the app config.ts, and there you will have to make this particular. So you got to remove this as well, and this is going to be just another providers. Save it, and you're pretty much done, right? So that's all about event replay. And now I'm going to be taking you back to the browser. And there in the browser, I'm going to be talking about the important aspect, right? So this is going to be a little theoretical one. And then since I'll try to see if we have some old Angular project available. And then in that project, we'll try to see what really needs to happen. So when we are putting a new build system in place. So as you know that Angular 18 or 17 onwards rather, Angular has already been playing with the new build system called Vite. And then since and then also the esbuild. So esbuild, if you look at here, let me just open this particular piece of documentation. So if you look at here, the top of the page, you would notice that, esbuild, this is the marketing, or this is what essentially they're saying. So esbuild is basically built on Go language. It basically uses the system resources pretty well, and through that it basically bundles your application, so it takes a lot lesser time. So as you can see over here in their page itself, the ES build for this particular application that they have built, it took merely 0.39 second to build, whereas Parcel to Rollup 4 or Webpack 5 took considerably longer, right? So obviously esbuild is essentially a stepped up version from the Webpack, and that's precisely the reason why Angular team also decided to move away from Webpack and move to esbuild. And Vite is obviously something that we have been observing all that while. But earlier it used to be the Webpack dev server, and nowadays it's basically the Vite through which it renders your page while development. So now we've been using Vite. So let's just open this. So Vite was essentially a Vue.js project, and a Vue.js, while the team was working on Vue.js, that's when they created this particular thing. So it's a next generation front-end tooling, and then that's something that which is being popularly used across the frameworks now. So Angular has also adopted Vite, and this is what you would be seeing in your application, that earlier the Webpack dev server used to come in the console. I think that, like, if you run the dev application, or let me take you there. So what I'm going to do is, like, I'll just open this. Excuse this part. All right, so it looks like there was something wrong with the build. So the code appears absolutely fine. There is no problem with it. It looks like it's just that there is some stale data which was rendered in the browser. Precisely, that's when it's failing. So let me take you back to the browser and try to open the dashboard. Student list. It takes a while to load, and that's how it loads, right? So I think this also looks pretty much clean, right? And then subjects, students, home, all these APIs are working very well. So there is no problem. And then I think we're pretty much good here. So we have seen the Vite server. So Vite server is what we have come here for. Let me just reload this page once again, and then I'll show you something. So now if you look at this particular bit, right? Let me open it from the beginning again. And what I'm going to do is, like, I'm just going to be looking at the web sockets at this moment. So if you click here and then look at the message header, or rather the initiator, you would notice that it is a Vite client. So earlier there used to be a Webpack client, which used to basically monitor the hot reload thing from your IDE to the browser. This time around, it is a Vite, and that's why you couldn't see it here. So had you checked the same WebSocket thing in the local host 4 years ago, or the 2 or 3 years ago, you would have seen probably the Webpack thing. So Webpack dev server used to control it. This time around, it's basically the Vite, and that's what you essentially see here. And also, if you look at here, it basically, in the message over here from the client.ts at 175 line, is saying that it is basically a Vite which is connecting to the browser, right? So you can see it here, Vite connecting, and here it says that the Vite connected, right? So that's how it is. So there is one thing which is very clear from the messaging, that it is the Vite server that we run our application on, and also we've noticed that esbuild is the build that Angular is going to be making use of going forward. So now what I'm going to do is, like, I'll just explain this bit, and here in this documentation it talks about what really needs to be done in case of migrating the build system. So it essentially says is that if you want to do the automated one, so you can basically make use of this one. And in case if you want to do the manual migration, this is where you can come. This is where things get interesting. So what I'm going to do is, like, it's automated one is something, it tells you like what command needs to be done and things like that. And we already have an Angular 18 application. So let me search on the internet and let me bring up some Angular 16 or 15 or probably 14 application, and that's when we'll try to compare if things are okay or not, right? So I'm just going to be putting this on hold, and I'll resume the video as soon as I find Angular 16 application. All right, so here is the application that I found from my GitHub, which was built on Angular 13 earlier. So if you can look at it over here, it has almost all the default details available, and this was basically the Angular material based application. Let me also change the branch. All branches. I think I'll go with the main. And from main here, I'm going to be looking at the package.json. And this is what essentially we had been using, right? And also let me try to open the angular.json. So here in the angular.json, if you look at the projects, and if you further come here till this point, builder, it says builder, Angular dev kit, builder, build Angular, and browser. Right? So what I'm going to do is, like, I'm just trying to compare this with the latest application, and we'll see that what is the difference, and what is that essentially it does, right? So now let me open the migration document and look at the manual migration steps. So what it's essentially telling is that if you are doing a manual migration, these are the steps that one has to follow. All right. So if you look here, what it essentially tells is that previously there are basically two build system available. So now let me open the Angular 13 app, and if you look here at line number 24, I'm also making it a highlight over here. Or let me just expand the um, thing and line number 24. So if you look at the line number 24, what it essentially tells is that Angular build is using a browser-based build, right? And now let's look at the documentation over here. So it tells us that the browser esbuild builder builds only the client-side bundle of an application designed to be compatible with the existing browser builder that provides a pre-existing build system. It serves a drop-in replacement for existing browser application. So let's say if what essentially means is that let's say if you are unable to change your build system from browser to application. Okay, so let me recap. So let me give you a quick quick anecdote. So application is the new builder which is basically used in Angular 18 or 17 plus application. So how we gonna see this is that I'm going to be taking you to the code editor, and there at the code editor, let me just open the angular.json, and here at the angular.json, if you look here at line number 18, what it essentially tells is that the builder which is used to build this application is build Angular, and then the application level builder, right? But then if I take you back to the Angular 13 application, you would notice that build was browser. So as we had seen just a moment ago, that the latest one is the application level builder. And here what it talks about is that in case if you want to move away from browser based builder, which is obviously the older one, the newer one, you have two options. The first is the application, and the second one is the browser ES build. The benefit of using application is that it also does server-side rendering. And in case of a browser ES build, it is only capable of doing the client-side rendering or client-side bundling, right? It does not really do the server-side rendering, right? So this is something which is again related to server-side rendering or server-side SSR as they call it. But that's something which we have not really covered in the channel. But I'm pretty sure that if you look at the documentation, you would be able to nail it. In case if you have a specific doubt, please do write down in the comment section below, and I'll be more than happy to create a video tutorial around creating, Angular 18 based SSR server side rendered application, right? And we may also monitor the performance of it, right? But that's something that I'll optionally build in case if you want me to build. That's when I will build it. Otherwise, I'll try to skip this. Right? So if you want to know more, please do write in the comment section below. Okay? Now, looking at this, we have seen that it basically talks about the two type of build system, which is application and the browser ES build. Now, looking at this particular documentation or this piece of documentation information over here, it tells us that the browser ES build is available within the build Angular package that is present in the Angular CLI generator application. You can try out the new build system for application that uses browser builder. If using a custom builder, please refer to the documentation that other builders have provided and their migration guide, right? So how different is it? So what in case if you want to move away from browser builder to browser ES build, this is how you would basically do it, right? And this is basically done in an Angular 18 application. So if you're migrating the older application, which is built on ES, which is basically built the browser-based bundling, and to browser hyphen ES, this is what you essentially has to listen. This is what essentially you have to do, right? And in case of a manually migrating to application builder, this is what you would do. You will have to basically come here and write it down the application, right? So that's something which you've already seen, and let me again show you in the code editor. So if you look at the line number 80, we already have this as application available over here. So that's something which is basically by default available in higher application or the latest Angular application, which is 18 in our case. So this is pretty much done. But just in case if you're migrating from the older one, this is what you essentially need to do, and just follow this step. Now, if you come down, once the builder name has been changed, there are other things that also that matters, and that's something which you need to change. So now the main should be renamed to browser. So let's just look at this, right? So if you look at this particular documentation, right? So line number 28. So main is essentially telling you to generate what is the main file which will be generated when you do the build. So essentially saying src / main.ts. However, if you look at the latest application, and that's something which is which we already have over here. So if you look at this, what it tells is that you need to remove the main and put the browser. So once you remove the main and put the browser, src / main ts is something which is required to be done in case if you're using a latest build system, which is Angular 18, right? So if you had an older one, you would have to probably change that main to browser. Right now again, let me take you back to the browser. So here the browser. What I'm gonna do is like should be, and then now if you look at the second point, it says that the polyfill has to be in array, and that's something which will verify. Builder optimizer should be removed as it's covered in optimization option. So build optimizer, right? So that's also something which we'll see if we had it available in our Angular 13 application. Resources output part should be removed, and this is now always media. And then vendor chunk and other details, right? So let's just look at and then similarly there are other things also which are written over here. So that's something which you can verify. And let's just right, and let's just verify this in the serverless. So if you notice that it has the main, and then the polyfill, which was basically a string-based property individually, now it has become the array-based thing. So look at the code editor here. So now if you see here the polyfill, it has become an array, and within that array you can provide what you really need to put in the polyfills, right? So these are some of the examples wherein you can see that what has really changed in Angular. So again, let me take you back to the browser, and now I'll try to open the different section. And similarly, you would have to change all of these paths which are given here, and then these are not important. So now if you come down here, executing a build which remains similar. So what you need to do is npm run build, or ng build is something that the command will basically build the application. That's something which you have been seeing all that time. Now starting the server is again the command remains same, the serve, and then in our case we have been using ng npm run start, and that's what which triggers or starts the development server. So now if you come down here, this is the next important thing that I'm going to cover, right? So ESM default imports versus namespace imports. All right. So here, if you look at this particular documentation, it says that the kind of import newer application expects, right? So ESM default imports versus namespace import. So if you look at this particular example given at this line where I'm highlighting currently, so it says that import star as moment from moment. So it is basically trying to import the moment, everything inside the moment as moment. It is a namespace used namespace import. So like if you build an application with this particular import, this is the warning which is going to be generating. So what it tells is that essentially that you will have to make ESM default imports. So ESM stands for ECMAScript modules. So going forward, the ECMA ESM default ESM modules are the modules which will be generated by default. And in case if you want to import anything from the moment.js in this particular case, what you really need to do is just convert that into import moment from moment, and that would do the trick, right? So in that case, as you can see over here, that it does not really generate any sort of warning when you do it this way. But then if you are doing a namespace import, it'll basically it'll generate a warning when you are building an application. All right, so going forward, please make yourself comfortable with the ESM default import. That's what is going to be importing. But then there is also there is also something which is now available using this particular keyword over here. So let me just open this, right? So here, what it tells is that ES module interop. right? So what by default with, if you look at this particular piece of documentation, what it tells is that by default with ES module interrupt false or not set, TypeScript treats common JS AMD UMD module similar to ESX module. In doing this, there are two parts in the in particular which turned out to be flawed assumptions. Now look at this. So a namespace import is essentially input star as moment from moment at same as const moment require moment, right? So that's one. And a default import like import moment from moment acts as the same as const moment require moment dot default, right? So this is obviously a mismatch. So in case if you want to fix this, so the mismatch causes two issues as you can see over here. So that's something that you can basically come here and read it. And now you can read about it, like what is this particular flag which we are trying to set in the tsconfig.json, right? So in case in case if you want to have the if you want to implement the current usage, you will basically have to set this option as true, right, in your tsconfig.json, right? ES module interrupt. So in that case, it will basically try to import it correctly. Right, so this pretty much it about the ES and default import. Now, if you look down here, it tells us that Vite is a official development server, and that's something which we have already seen in the web sockets. So we could see there the Vite was available. So that's pretty much it, ladies and gentlemen, for this particular tutorial. All right, so now I'm going to be looking at the last point, which is basically the web containers which are used in the documentation. Also the default documentation location has changed, right? So like, if you look at the web browser, if I try to open a different web browser window, and if now I look at the web container, so web container is let me just open the official documentation, right? So let's say if you are building a web container, or a web container essentially is a product of a stack glitch. So you may have wondered in the past, like you may wonder how stack glitch basically run your application, the entire browser application on your browser without the node modules and things like that. So all those things are made possible through web containers. So web container is basically a runtime that it provides, right? So now if you look at the Angular documentation, it has the web container in it, right? So anywhere you find an example, this is basically going to be running in web container. Web container is something which is basically a StackBlitz product, and that provides a runtime in your application. Anything that a browser needs, or anything which is required for a UI app to run, it's something which that web container can provide, right? So you basically will have to set up. So you can come here in the guide section, and then in case if you want to include that in your personal application, that's something which you're most welcome to do through the web container. The web container, like, and how you can achieve it by going through this documentation. You just need to type in the web container in the browser, and then you will be able to navigate to this particular documentation over here, and you can just read through it, and then can run it. Can run any application from node modules in a dev mode in the browser. All the runtime will be provided in the browser, right? So the web container was another thing which was changed, and then the last point is that the Angular default option has changed. So now if you search Angular in the browser, so Angular dev is the link which is going to be the official link in the is going to be an official link. So like, let's say if you search Angular and do a search, let's say if you search the Angular documentation, so by default it's the angular.dev which gets opened up on the page, and here is the list of version that it has, and it has a documentation of. So the latest version is V8, obviously, and that's something you can come over here and read it through. So you can just scroll up and down and read every other documentation on the piece of it. So now also, if you look at this particular piece here, it's basically provided through the web container, the StackBlitz example that we had seen earlier, right? So now you can see that it is running the console, and all those build related console logs are being printed here. So that's something you can see. And now if you notice that the local host 42 is running over here. So that's how it is going to be. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I think that we have covered the entire series and we have finished the entire series of Angular 18. We have covered all these topics, right? We have seen the practical examples as well, and then we have also seen that how event replay works, and what is the SSR and things like that. Just in case if you want to know more about Angular application, please do write down in the comment section below. I'll be more than happy to create a separate video tutorial around your aspirations or your need. So thank you very much. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for listening in. And I'm going to be seeing you in the next tutorial. And I'm going to be finishing up the Angular 18 upgrade tutorial here. So thanks again. Thank you very much once again. And if you have not subscribed to my channel, please do so. And also hit the bell icon. You will be notified in case if I post a new video. So thank you once again, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to be seeing you in the next video series.